The Worst Equestrian Necromancer, Chapter 7, The Return. Rhaegar watched from his hiding spot as the ponies disappeared from the abandoned castle in the Everfree Forest. He was glad that they had elected to leave shortly after their climactic showdown, as this part of his plan relied upon only 2 people knowing what happened here. Well, 3 if you counted a tricky demon. Rhaegar had been quietly observing events for some time, with no clothes covering him and no tools on his body. Going in bare bones had been necessary to avoid detection. From the glow to his left, he could tell his son was casting a scrying spell again. "You were right, Pops. We've got to hit in the throne room. Need my help with this part?" Rhaegar shook his head, not bothering to whisper as he emerged from his hiding spot. "No, Rhaegar shall do it himself. Go and check on the little filly that you like. Rhaegar's sure that she would appreciate it." Black Sun's blue coat darkened to a shade of violet. "Dad, I don't like any girls. That being said, I do have that store that you asked me to open in Ponyville to look after, so I guess I should make sure that the residents know I'm okay." Rhaegar watched him fly off and smiled. He then did something that any pony who knew him would find quite surprising. He straightened up, and when he did it, it was as if a hunched lich became someone else entirely. The constant clicking noises of his bones against the stone floor on each other, the quirky movement that seemed to be one song away from breaking into a jig, all of it vanishing as if it never had been. In its place stood a skeleton in complete control, silent and walking with no wasted movement. He calmly moved to the center of the throne room, nodded, and then began a slow circle around the room, all while completely quiet. Once he completed the circle, he returned to the middle of the room and raised his hands. As he did, black smoke began billowing from his open palms. If anyone familiar with magic were here to witness his actions, they would quickly realize the spell he was casting could go wrong easily. If it failed, he would be lost in the realm of Uyeu, the Vowel's Tempest. If it went perfectly, the influence of the realm of vows and wind would only briefly pass through the veil and leave things mostly the same, with a noticeable difference of all recently banished spirits being returned to the room. As the black smoke spilled all over the room, Rhaegar began humming. The smoke began to emit speech that somehow lacked all consonants, speaking in an impossible language about the death of worlds. Rhaegar hummed louder. Finally, a few spectral beings phased into existence, singing prophecies of the fall of all equine kind. Rhaegar broke into an ominous song of his own, drowning out their lyrics as he continued to ignore the spell's side effects. As his efforts neared completion, the ghostly choir vanished, the impossible language quieted, and finally the smoke vanished as he brought his hands together in a clap that sent a pulse of magical energy throughout the room. The first thing Rhaegar noticed was that there were numerous slugs littering the floor, all of them dead. They also had a number of typewriters and sheets of paper scattered around them. Rhaegar picked one up out of idle curiosity and then smirked. "Ah, an oyo a Guess we were wrong about the monkeys." He pocketed the page and saw his reason for being here, a cloud of nebulous black energy floating about in a confused manner. Rhaegar walked up to it and slapped his face with both hands. The loud clacks heralded the return of his normally noisy way of talking before he began posturing. "Hello, little nightmare. I am Rhaegar, the ageless death. Would you terribly mind accompanying Rhaegar back to his hidden lair?" The spirit bobbed back and forth, as if debating this, before floated up and down in an excellent facsimile of a nod. Rhaegar clattered his teeth in an audible smile. "Oh, wonderful! Rhaegar must of course do a small errand first. Rhaegar asks if you would simply go to the largest central hub of necromancy in the current magical sphere. Once above that, Rhaegar's lair will be 100 miles due east. Go, and do not tarry. Your spirit will fail again if you do not reach the lair soon." The spirit flew away. Rhaegar moved to the throne and sat upon it, pondering his inability to truly smile. He'd gauged the grin that he'd probably have after successfully completing the spell would have long passed shit-eating, and would have quickly approached a smile singularity. Luckily he had no muscles, thus averting the happiest apocalypse the world had ever seen. He lazily waved a hand, summoning a set of midnight blue robes around himself. With another wave, an orb of black light appeared. He tapped it once and was greeted with soft laughter as the call started connecting. He had bobbed his head to the ringtone that he had lifted from a call almost a century ago. If Rhaegar remembered correctly, Black Sun had spilled spaghetti all over him during dinner, causing Rhaegar to shout about impurities on his very soul. Celestia laughed for a good while after that, at least partially due to the orb hiding the meal until it had suddenly appeared all over his robes. Eventually the laughter stopped, and Rhaegar found himself gazing into Celestia's tea room. Celestia and Luna were sitting by a table with all sorts of refreshments laid out. Celestia looked her normal, beautiful self, but when he looked at Luna, Rhaegar wanted to frown. She looked like a fraction of the mare that he remembered. She was much smaller than before, and was completely lacking that energetic glint in her eye. Rhaegar forced those thoughts to the back of his mind.
Good morrow to both of the wonderful princesses of Equestria. Rhaegar hoped that Luna would be returned tonight.
Celestia smiled at Rhaegar, while Luna stared. She had the expression of an exhausted dog staring at an intruder, knowing that she wanted to do something about it, but debating if that was possible at this exact moment. Celestia ignored that and continued.
Rhaegar, I'm so glad that you called. You were right. Luna came back exactly on the 1000th year. I would hug you if you ever showed that boneheaded skull of yours.
Rhaegar held out his arms wide, joy flowing freely from him.
Of course Rhaegar was right. Rhaegar keeps too many secrets not to share them with those in need, or to accidentally make some very interesting people.
Luna looked between Rhaegar and Celestia. She appeared to be trying to decide between bringing up the necromancer in the room or just letting it lie. Rhaegar decided that there was no need to wait.
And little Luna, last time Rhaegar saw you was after you banished Discord. Rhaegar believes it was a victory party and you tried to sneak away with that wonderful little Thestro when Celestia had her back turned.
Rhaegar watched as Luna's fur darkened.
Celestia, thou have some explaining to do. Namely, why is there an accursed lich appearing in thy tea room and speaking of events from our own private lives?
Celestia gave her sister a patient smile.
Well, Luna, about a century after you left, Rhaegar here called me and demanded that we send guards to destroy him. Since then, we've cultivated a wonderful friendship. I can show you the recordings of the challenges that he had put forth for our guards.
Luna stared in slack-jawed shock at Celestia's claim, while Rhaegar clattered his bones. He raised a hand, which drew the attention of both mares.
Rhaegar was just calling to offer Luna an invitation to our tea in a couple of decades. Rhaegar assured that she will absolutely love to see this handsome skull in person.
He raised a single hand to his chin.
Or should it be a pony? Rhaegar still sometimes has trouble with the pony form of this language.
Luna continued to stare for a moment before shaking her head in confusion.
Of course, we would love to see thy handsome skull for ourselves. I bet it would look lovely above my mantle.
Rhaegar was once again glad of his lack of a face. The unfortunate princess had just stepped right into his trap.
Well, Rhaegar needed to send a welcome home gift to you anyways. Give Rhaegar a moment.
The guards outside the royal tea room were less well-trained than their bedroom counterparts. They froze in place at their forgotten princess's shriek.
What in the ninth pit of Tartarus is that? Did it just drop a skull on me?
The guards heard this devolve into a mixture of screams and laughs before they reached a consensus. When the princesses left the tea room together, they barely noticed that their guards were missing. Not sure if this is just me, but when Celestia teases Luna, or vice versa, it is just absolutely great. Anywho, let's get on to our excellent donators. Top donators are 630, Peter Coulthard, J Tinman, Darkside, Only One Thing, and Dash of Evergreen. Rayden, Narwhals, Blackmoonheart, Pastel Skies, Austin Roland, Crazy Color 557, Stu Hex, Sword Brethren Mordred, Omicron Library, Will, Chris Twinkie, Hadzaza, Rightful, Maverick, and many more awesome people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.